Hello and welcome to this podcast from the BBC World Service. Please let us know what you think and tell other people about us on social media. Podcasts from the BBC World Service are supported by advertising.
As you're no doubt aware, dealing with waste down here on planet Earth is a big problem. But the amount of debris floating around in space is also rapidly growing, with more than 20,000 objects larger than 10 centimeters in diameter orbiting Earth at speeds of up to 28,000 kilometers per hour. This space junk is made up of defunct satellites, bits of spacecraft, spent rockets, and when this debris collides with a working satellite, for example, the damages and losses can run up a costly bill of millions of dollars. To make things worse, each collision can trigger a chain reaction, resulting in even more debris. As the amount of space debris increases, so too does the growing threat of damage to passenger-carrying spacecraft and even to the International Space Station. But as we'll hear, the answer to this problem could lie in the feet of the gecko. Hey there, welcome back to 30 Animals That Made Us Smarter, an original podcast from the BBC World Service. The podcast which investigates the amazing ways in which animals have inspired us. If you've enjoyed listening to our previous podcasts, I'd really appreciate you spreading the word and telling your friends and family about us. If they've never heard a podcast before, show them how to find a podcast app, type 30 Animals That Made Us Smarter into the search box and hit subscribe. Right, in this episode number 17, we'll be hearing how geckos' feet have inspired super adhesive materials that could be useful inside the human body, as well as helping us to clear up waste in space. Until now, capturing space debris has been far from easy. This is because suction cups don't work in a vacuum, which, if I'm honest, is something I hadn't considered until now. And traditional sticky substances like tape and glue can't handle the freezing temperatures of space. But now, thanks to geckos, or more precisely, their feet, a team at Stanford University in the United States of America and NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory may have found the solution, a new kind of robotic sticky arm to grab and dispose of the debris. Geckos are exotic-looking small to medium-sized lizards that are found in the more temperate and tropical regions of the world, including India, Africa, Australia, and South America. There are thought to be well over 1,000 different species, and they live in a wide variety of habitats. They can range in size from a few centimeters to more than half a meter in length. They're best known for their amazing ability to walk up vertical surfaces even when they're as smooth as glass, and they can scurry across ceilings with absolute ease. The secret to their amazing sticking abilities lies in the billions of hair-like structures called setae that cover their toes. To explain how it works, I want you to picture a tree. Its trunk is split into branches, and then these branches are divided into more branches. Well, we see something similar in the gecko's foot. Their toes have a series of ridges which are covered by these hair-like setae. Each one is finer than a human hair. Each setae is then further divided into hundreds of split ends called spatulae. In this way, the gecko maximizes the surface area of contact and adhesion. But how does the adhesion work? It all comes down to something called van der Waals forces. These are very small intermolecular forces that exist when the positive sides of one molecule attract the negative side of another molecule. The result is that the two molecules are drawn together. It's not exactly the same, but it's a bit like what happens when a couple of magnets are attracted to each other and snap together. The molecules between the CT and the gecko's foot and the surface on which it's moving are charged and attract to one another. And this results in this adhesive, gravity-defying effect. Each square millimeter of the gecko's foot has about 14,000 CT. The adhesion forces are so strong that a gecko could effectively walk upside down carrying a rucksack weighing 40 kilograms. But there's something else. How they position their feet is also important. With every step they take, they press down their foot and then drag it back just a little. This causes the tiny hairs to be pulled sideways, and so a greater surface area is exposed. As the surface area increases, so too does the force holding the gecko to the wall. To let go of the wall, the gecko pushes its foot forward. This decreases the surface area in contact, and so the adhesion force is reduced, and the gecko can peel its foot away from the wall. The real trick here is that by changing the direction of the CT, the grip is instantly broken, which means there are no sticky residues left behind and it's easy to pull away. As you can imagine, this has really attracted a lot of interest amongst scientists. So before we return to those robotic sticky arms in space, let me tell you about some other applications. Because in the last 10 years or so, scientists have been able to create synthetic CT. Up to now, many of the techniques consist of etching a material called a polymer with electrons to create very small CT. And by very small, I mean invisible to the human eye. Using these techniques, engineers have created a number of products that take advantage of the gecko's adhesive abilities. One of these is gecko tape. A piece about 1 centimeter squared could hold more than 100 grams. Then there's another product called Gecko, which is similar, but it can be used in wet conditions and also relies on chemical reactions of glue derived from mussels. In fact, you can check out our podcast number 8 if you want to find out more about mussels and glue. But back to geckos. Dr. Jeff Karp is a bioengineer who, together with colleagues at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in the United States of America, has created a waterproof adhesive bandage inspired by geckos, which could soon join sutures and staples for patching up surgical wounds or internal injuries. When their work began, very few adhesives were used internally, but there was a need for some sort of tape which you could wrap around the intestines, for example, after an operation, or that could be used to patch up a hole. It would also need to be biodegradable, breaking down into substances that weren't toxic, and it would need to be flexible and compatible with the body so that it wouldn't cause any internal inflammation. This led to the development of a tape with tiny hair-like structures, micron-sized hairs less than a millimeter in length. The hairs are spaced just wide enough to grip and interlock with underlying tissue, and then a thin coating of glue was added to help the tape stick in wet places like the heart or bladder. There's also potential for infusing this gecko-inspired tape technology with certain medication, which would be released as the tape degraded inside the body. But let's return to that sticky problem of how to clear up that space debris. I mean, just think about this for a moment. How do you grab debris floating in space? One solution is to have big sticky arms and hands that reach, grab and bend. Well, a team of scientists led by Mark Kutkowski, professor of mechanical engineering at Stanford University in California, have developed a gripper that has a grid of adhesive squares on its front and arms with thin adhesive grips that can fold out and move around an object, which means it can grab curved as well as flat pieces of junk. NASA's Extreme Environment Robotics Group have been involved with this project, and the group have already sent the gripper up to the International Space Station for testing. The next step is to develop a climbing robot assistant that could crawl around the spacecraft, doing repairs, filming, and checking for defects. One of the robots they're working on is called AstroBee. astrobees are free-floating robotic spheres that should be able to fetch tools for astronauts or anchor themselves and film videos during experiments. The aim is to fit these with gecko grippers as well, so they can stick anywhere they're needed. Meanwhile, geckos have inspired another team, this time at Simon Fraser University in Burnaby, Canada, where a climbing robot named Abigail 3 crawls up a vertical whiteboard surface using a gecko-inspired adhesion technique. It can climb vertically and move between horizontal and vertical surfaces using its legs and 24 miniature gear motors. In endurance tests, it completed nearly 4 hours of continuous climbing and over 7 hours of loitering. I kind of like this idea of robots loitering like us. Next thing you know, they'll be meeting around the water cooler. But of course, robot geckos that can climb vertically and move horizontally over extended periods of time increases the length of missions these types of robots can be sent on, and gives us access to places that would otherwise be too difficult or hazardous for us to reach. So perhaps it won't be long before we have robots scuttling up the side of spaceships, collecting the debris floating around up there, and helping to repair and maintain structures that are too dangerous for humans to reach. There's no doubt that being able to clear up our space debris would be a real step forward for space exploration. On a lighter note, the development of this gecko technology might also mean that my childhood dream of scaling up the side of buildings like Spider-Man might not be so crazy after all. Imagine what you could do with a pair of gecko skin socks and gloves. It would certainly make cleaning skyscraper windows more exciting. Head to our website now, bbcworldservice.com/30animals, where you'll find more information about this story. In the next episode of 30 Animals That Made Us Smarter, we'll be hearing about how the flippers of humpback whales could help make our wind turbines more efficient. It's a breeze, as they say. Thanks for listening.